So, one of the arguments against religion is the argument for the absence of evidence, archaeological evidence, the absence of seeing God. Like, oh, I've never seen God, therefore God doesn't exist, or I don't see Noah's Ark, and therefore it never existed, or I don't see any remnants of this giant civilization that was left. Where are the bones? Where are the artifacts? Where is all that stuff? I don't see it, therefore it never existed. And I guess the real point of this video is to say, is that really a legitimate argument? That if you don't see something that is perhaps over 1,000 years old, does that mean that it's not there? So to kind of model, I guess, the argument, or to give an exhibit for this argument, I want to draw to a National Geographic article that was published recently, a number of years ago, actually 5 years ago or so, that refers to the Amazon basin. It's called Lost. And in this article, it talks about the Amazon, what happened with that piece of land, that for a very long time, nothing had been discovered in the Amazon basin, and that the scientists and archaeologists had all unanimously been of the opinion that nothing could grow there. And then close to the year 2000, they were looking through a satellite image, and they looked down and they saw these weird looking figures, because they've been clear cutting the Amazon. And they looked down and they were like, well, what the heck are all these weird looking figures? And it showed up one of these figures, this sort of geometric shape. And so then they started excavating in the Amazon, in a place where all the archaeologists and all the scientists knew, and they've known for like centuries, that no one ever lived there. Nobody ever could have lived there because of the temperament of the soil wasn't deep enough and wasn't rich enough, and what are all these different reasons they had. And plus, they'd never seen any archaeological evidence of it. It just didn't exist. And so then they started excavating, and then they find this civilization. And I would like to, I do want to go through and read this article, but I'm not going to for the sake of time. So I'm just going to summarize it. Basically say that, since it was about 1999 when they saw those things on the satellite, they've discovered over 200 geometric earthworks spanning a distance greater than 155 miles, and the most of it dates to about 1283 AD, which is actually like 700 years after like the latest known event in certain scriptures that I'm familiar with, and even further after most of the events in the said scriptures. And anyway, so they find all this complex society and complex culture, and there's this huge population they assume of tens of thousands of people. But where are the bones then? I mean, this is only like 1,000 years ago. Where are the bones from these tens of thousands of people? So 60,000 people, they assume. Well, they're gone, and it's only been like 1,000 years. So actually less than 1,000 years. So like 800 years. So anyway. They make another point. They say, it's also possible that structures serve different purposes over time. It says that one geographer and anthropologist said, for example, in Lawrence, this is Kansas, there's a Masonic temple. It's now a bar. There was a bank. It's now a restaurant called Teller's. He said these things happen. They discovered, all these banks of earth that had been dug out, and these works and walls around them, and all these different kinds of things. Really interesting things they found. But the point is that the absence of this archaeological evidence was not proof that it didn't exist. Now that they found some of it, that can be proof that it did exist. And I think the same argument goes with God as well. If someone does not have evidence for there being God, that doesn't mean that there is no God. It just means that they don't have evidence for God. And if someone doesn't have evidence for Noah's Ark, it doesn't mean that there was no Noah's Ark. Or if they don't have evidence for Abraham, or evidence for other events or civilizations described in scriptures, doesn't mean they didn't exist. It just means that we don't know whether or not it existed. Now, if there is evidence, though, that does mean something. And for a lot of these things, they actually have found quite a bit of evidence. One point, actually a couple points I want to make. One of them is evidence for Christ. So I want to make another video about this another time, but there is what you might call a typification or a character similar to Christ that's existed in just about every religion, which is interesting. And I'm not going to go into too much about that right now, but that's just evidence or interesting for that. And then when approaching the subject of God or religion, if someone doesn't have evidence for God in their life, does that mean that there isn't a God? Well, interestingly enough, for thousands of years, at least as all of recorded history that we know of, people have been having experiences that are understood to be spiritual by some. And it's possible that these experiences are fraudulent, or it's possible that they are psychotic or delusional, or in a number of things. It's possible. But I've known some of the people who've had these kinds of experiences, and I do think that there are, on occasion, delusional aspects of these. I've certainly ran into fraud, but the people that I know who've had these kinds of experiences, I do not believe it to be fraud, nor do I believe it to be psychosis. So, and that's me having a little bit of experience as someone going to psychiatry. Don't have tons of experience yet, but I have some familiar with it, and also I have a degree in psychology as well. So, but who knows? My opinion may change as I get more experience. I'm not saying that I know everything or have I'm not an expert in this yet or anything. But just based on my experience, it doesn't seem to line up as being psychosis, the people that I know, and myself included in that. I've had some experiences with these kinds of things. And but I don't know. It could. I'm still open to the possibility that it could have delusional aspects to it, or it could be delusional or whatever. I'm not certain. I don't believe that, but I don't like to rule things out completely, because then I get too close-minded. So, anyways, the main point of this, though, is if somebody wants to believe, if you want to believe in God, and you get a lot of people that are telling you that no, you can't believe in God, or you're stupid if you believe in God. You being stupid can be a separate argument about than whether or not you believe in God, because actually there are a lot of very intelligent people who do believe in God, and that are religious, and there's also a lot of very intelligent people that don't believe in God and that are not religious, and so. Intelligence has nothing to do with it. Now, what about your ability to analyze data, these kinds of things like that? If you believe in God, does that mean you're just horrible at analyzing information? Well, you could be horrible at analyzing information, but there are people who have done lots of analysis of archaeological data and still believe in God. And there are people who have done lots of studying on it and don't believe in God. So really, I think what it comes down to is, what do you want to believe? And some people don't want to believe, and some people do want to believe. And there are, though, I believe there are some people who do really want to believe, and they are handed or given so many persuasive arguments against believing that they find it very difficult to have faith when they want to have faith. And what I'm trying to say is that you can have faith, and there is actually a lot of good, reasonable logic behind that. And you don't have to feel like you need to abandon your faith. I think there may be things that you'll need to change with your beliefs. I know there was a lot of things that I changed with my beliefs, but you can still believe in God. That doesn't have to go away. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful for some people.